I'm a frustrated psychologist. I would have liked to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a DJ as well. I've still got a chance at that. But I think I've left my run too late to be a psychologist. I'll never make it. I didn't have the marks. It was very sad. I had to turn to prostitution. That sounds disrespectful for prostitutes, sex workers, whatever. But look, they are in a respectable occupation. I am a consultant. That's what I mean. But I had to turn to something. But I wanted to be a psychologist. So, I'll live out the dream in this episode, because I've got an idea rolling around in my head of a psychological sort of, structure. A model, that's what they call it, I think. I've got a psychological model. It's probably not original. I've never had an original idea in my life. We get lots of ideas as we wander through our lives, and then we like to rehash those as ours. But this one, it's a model for, now I've had it rolling around in my head, just now, whilst I was hanging out the clothes, before which I was washing the dishes, and my wife, who is on a Zoom meeting, called out and said, "Can you be a little bit less noisy with the dishwashing, because I'm on a meeting here." We're feminists. Role reversal, That's great. It's fantastic. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like a real man. Anyway. And it does, actually. Because I'm extremely comfortable with it. Yeah. But anyway, so my model for psychology, my psychological model, it goes like this, and I'm imagining, because you can psychology is logic and maths, as far as I know, and some people don't need psychology. They don't. Psych, brain, ology, logic, or logical. Yeah, I'm sure that's from logic. Okay, ology. So, using a bit of maths. Logic is maths. So bringing maths into thinking. Okay, now you don't need to do that. You can just jump on social media and shoot from the hip. You don't need psychology. You've got it all worked out already. You don't need evidence. You don't need statistics. You don't need a rational basis for your claims or anything like that. You can just shoot from the hip. You can say things like, you can make a meme, for example. You can be anything you want to be if you just put your mind to it. Yeah. Well, I wanted to be a psychologist, and I put my mind to that, and I didn't get the marks. Yeah. Well, you should have tried harder. Oh, all right. I also wanted to be an Olympic 100-metre sprinter, all right? But I'm not Kalenjin, so I couldn't do it. Well, if you had practiced. Bullshit! I haven't got the physiology. I was never, Whereas a psychologist would say, are you a thick Irishman? Well, to which I would say, yes, I am. Well, don't go into physics, and also look at your freckles. You'll never make it as an Olympic sprinter. Don't try that either, Try something you're good at. And I'll say, what? And they said, well, crack a joke or two. I don't know. Whatever you guys are good at, So that, So look, there's room for psychologists just to get yourself away from some of those memes. some of those memes, you read them and you say, that's not true at all. In fact, most of them, oh, that nails it. Someone puts up a meme, and you can be anything you want to be. And then 16 people make comments against that thing, and they say, nailed it. It didn't at all. It's like when Jesus was crucified. And the Romans, they put him bang, 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 bang. That would hurt. And they stood back, the Romans, and they went, nailed it. 3 days later, actually, no, they took him down, didn't they? Bad example, but you know what I'm getting at. Who took him down? His mother. Brutal. Had a happy ending, though. Little bits of fire over the top of the head. So, my model for psychology, it goes like this. And I'll call it, we're a social animal. We humans, we're a social animal. Well, we're social animals. Okay, if we're going to be psychologists, we had better get our grammar right. Okay. So, as I approach this model, which is going to be about this drive we all have to, not all of us, I haven't got the drive, to be acknowledged, to be understood. How's that sound? To be understood and to persuade. Okay. To understand, how about that? To be understood, to be persuaded, and to persuade. I'll just call it this model, even though this title is not all-encompassing for what I'm thinking about. It doesn't have to be. The levels, your level of persuasion, the levels of persuasion and influence and persuasion. A model for influencing and persuading. Okay, so I'm making this up as I go along. That's all right. When you have a thought in your head, and this goes to psychology a little bit too, I need to sneeze, and I may not. Hang on. If I respected you, as I've said before, I would edit that out. But I don't respect you, because I don't know you. How's the chickens? Anyway, want to see them? There's Sol, and there's the other three. Very nice. Okay. That's my hand. Okay, my model for persuasion. Now, I think people operate at different levels. And this is how we humans become so social, For example, and I'm going to try and attach categories to these levels. Levels are categories, whatever. Now, let me think about this. I'm going to start imagining a type A person is a person who has, a type A person is a person who has no real desire to take something out of his or her own head and shove it into somebody else's head. Right, that's a type A person. A person who can have an idea and just enjoy it, but not feel the need to have to, send that to someone else. So, maybe it's a slightly antisocial person, but maybe it's a kind of humble person, sometimes I think that what's the point of saying anything at all, because whatever thought I have in life, someone else out there is having that same thought but better. So we need a lot more silence in this world, but that silence is not going to come from me, because some of us have got an instinct to speak, whether we've got something to say or not. I'm one of those. All right, so a type A person is a person who is relaxed about having an idea but not feeling the need to share it. How's that sound? This sort of person might typically not be the sort of person who posts things, ideas, on social media. Okay, so that's a type A person, and that is a zero persuasion level. The zero persuasion level. That's a person who's really comfortable, relaxed, maybe zen, maybe stupid too, maybe has a low self-esteem, but may also be entirely self-actualized and be really bright. Could have a low self-esteem, and feel that his or her ideas are not worth sharing. Okay, that type A person. That person might be the sort of person, actually, who wants to be told what to think by type B, C, and D people, who I am coming up with next. Okay, a type B person. So type A, someone who has zero instinct for persuasion and influence. Okay. Now, a type B, that person essentially hides his or her ideas. Essentially, has them to him or herself, but disguises the fact that he or she is having thoughts at all. Goes to the pub and just talks about the footy, and nobody even knows that person is a philosopher of some sort. That's a type A person. A cagey one, a bit of a secretive one. That's not me, I don't think. A type B person is someone who, now I'll call these the unwitting inspirers. These are people who talk to themselves. Now, I kind of put myself in that category. I talk to myself, but I couldn't care less. Now, kind of, but you can be wrong about yourself, you see. It's where you have ideas, you think ideas aloud, and maybe you text them to other people and all that sort of stuff, but you have no interest. It's of no interest to you whether the other person takes on those ideas or not, or even reads them, and this is look, this YouTube channel is definitely not about me, but I like to use myself as an example when I'm a psychologist. So this is a rare moment where I'll use myself as an example, and that sort of zen. They're all levels of zen. I've got to remember we're a social animal. So some people want to influence others into ideas or action, as the case may be. They're going to be my type C's and my type D's. A type C person, I'm thinking ahead now, is going to be that sort of person who has an idea and wants to get that idea across to others. Whether that person acts on those ideas or not, that person doesn't matter. That person doesn't care. But the point is, that person wants the other person to be persuaded on a certain idea that he or she has had. So that would be a type C person. So a type B person has ideas and thinks aloud, basically. A type B person thinks aloud, but really doesn't care. Doesn't need any feedback as to whether his or her ideas have been accommodated by another person. Okay, so type A person doesn't even care. No, it's secretive. Doesn't even share his or her ideas at all, really. Talks about inane stuff, like my last episode. the episode previous to this one, you know. Just makes stuff up that doesn't even make sense, you know. That's the type A person, you know, because in that previous episode, in the episode previous to this one, I had an idea of what I wanted to talk about, but I thought, nah, that's just boring. So I just made up a story instead, loosely based on the more sort of intelligent thing I was thinking about, slightly more intelligent thing that I was thinking about. And I thought, that's boring. Yeah? So I just made up a story, you know, which was half lies instead. What was the idea that prompted the previous episode? It was... yeah, my goddaughter, she sends me things, and she sent me an opinion from someone who is a type D person. Her name is Candace Owen, or Candace Owens. I haven't sort of, I'm not sure. It's one of those two. And she's a type D person because she wants to spur other people into action. So she's an influencer in the internet world, you know. She's an influencer. She's very much a type D person, and she's passionate and even stressed, I think, as a result of needing other people to alter their, not only their thoughts, but their behaviours. Now, that's a type D person. Someone who's desperate for others, and this might be the most highly social person there is. A type D person is someone who... in my model, my psychological model, my psychology model, because I'm a psychologist today. A type D person is, you know, this sort of person that not only wants to alter other people's thought processes, but also their actions. That's type D. Type C person is someone who just wants to alter other people's thought processes, you know. Okay, so what was I talking about, or not talking about in the previous episode? I know what it was. I was sent a clip in which Candace Owens, who's an African-American influencer, as it turns out, and she argues a case for how African-Americans can be winners instead of losers. Now, there's a very big assumption in that, you know, presumption, presupposition, whatever, that African Americans are losing. Well, they are, I think, but because they got dealt with a losing hand, you see. And I think this Candace Owens is has got a model herself, a social model in her head of how African Americans can turn a losing hand into a winning hand. And maybe she's a poker player, you know. But other people, her enemies in the African-American community, have got an alternative model that they think will work, you know. Now, Candace, and in the previous episode, I didn't come up with a conclusion one way or the other, and I don't even now. So it's kind of her against the rappers is the way I characterized it. And she, and just as one example, she was railing against, in this clip, the idea that to oppose the English, as it were, yeah, which is, you know, the European Americans, essentially, no, why are you trying to even oppose them? You know, the rappers, I think, they are using a device in which they mangle the English language on purpose to make sure that they are not being English, you know. But they can't, because of their history, they can't fall back on whatever they were before because that's been erased. And that's a tragedy, you know. So what they're trying to do, see, if you're an African immigrant into America, as distinct from a descendant from a slave, you know, if you're an Obama, for example, you can fall back on your original culture and be comfortable with the English as well, you know, because you've got the other thing anyway. You've got this other identity. And I think rappers, you know, they take English words and just change the spelling of them for no reason at all. And then they take English grammar and change the grammar of it, you know, just so they're not being English, you know. And it gets to a point, I think Candace is arguing, that they're doing that to their own detriment. You know, because, well, every language, not just English, but every language evolves over hundreds of years and becomes kind of internally consistent and logical and all that sort of thing, and grammar becomes logical and all that sort of thing. And, you know, if in the space of one generation you're just going to completely mangle a language and kind of start your own version of English, and keeping in mind that the African Americans can't fall back on their original languages because all that's been erased. Terrible tragedy. You know, Africans, you know, there's African Americans who are the descendants of slaves. That's what I think of as African Americans. But there's Africans, and we've got a lot of them in Australia. We haven't got one ex-African slave here. You know, we might have one or two. But everyone who comes to Australia from Africa, because they've only just started coming here, Africans, we don't have a history with Africans in Australia, except for maybe 2 or 3 people every century. You know, people say, "Oh yeah, I know a guy." Yeah, I'm generalizing. You know, and generalizing is something that intelligent psychologists like me do. It's a very important tool in your thinking toolbox. The ability to generalize. It's not a bad thing. It's a smart